We all make choices. But in the end, our choices make us. So choose wisely. Subscribe to It's Erik Nagel wherever podcasts are found. And leave a positive review, won't you kindly?
Now.
Ladies and gentlemen of the universe, the next voice you hear.
It's Erik Nagel.
Hello, welcome to another edition of It's Erik Nagel. That is me. I am Sans, Matt O.G., Giddles, and Trevor. It's just me out there. Solo, flying free. On my own, doing a special version of this particular program. In this particular episode, I'll be talking to our old friends from the Talking Simpsons show, Henry Gilbert and Bob Mackey. These guys started off just doing a novelty podcast on the Laser Time Network. It outgrew that and went on its own and became a full-time thing for them with their Patreon, and they're making a lot of money, so they started expanding. They're doing Talking Futurama. They're doing this new show called What a Cartoon, where they go through and they discuss random episodes of popular cartoon franchises. And there's a lot of interaction with the audience in that one, so if you support their Patreon and you can give them suggestions, they'll have you work with them as part of an episode here and there, and they'll dissect all your favorite properties and let you know the real history about the creation of it, who's voicing what, where these people come from, hidden jokes within the episode, all those cool little Easter egg and novelty things that you look for in a movie or in a television show. They break it down, and you get to find out everything you like about your favorite animated properties. That being said, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk to the guys from Talking Simpsons.
It's Erik Nagel. It's Erik Nagel. We'll be right back.
Attention. Shameless social media plug.
It's Erik Nagel is on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and reluctantly, Snapchat. So follow, like, and subscribe. Would you kindly?
Hey, this is Hank Azaria, and you're listening to It's Erik Nagel, which, if you think about it, makes absolutely no sense.
Welcome back to It's Erik Nagel. This is something a little special that I wanted to do because we've talked to these gentlemen a few times when our show was still on satellite radio, and now we're welcoming them to our audience here. The guys from Talking Simpsons are Henry Gilbert and Bob Mackey. What's up, guys?
It's Erik. Hey. Hello, it's Bob.
So the last time we talked, we've talked to you guys, I think almost around every major milestone you guys were pulling off when it was still part of the Laser Time Network, and you were just doing it because it was something that you guys were all into. And then the separation from Laser Time to making it its own business, launching Patreon, launching all these other things as its own independent entity. And just to see where it's gone from that point. I think the last time we talked to you, somewhere early on in 2017, so it's been at least a year that we've talked to you on the program here, and so much has happened. So for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about here, the show is called Talking Simpsons. It's a podcast available everywhere you get your podcast, iTunes, Google Play, etc. What these guys did was something that I always talked about for years on Opie and Anthony that I wanted to do, was do some kind of show or podcast where you would go and just break down the episodes of The Simpsons. Now, there have been podcasts that do that. They do them randomly just based on, oh, I like this episode, I like that episode. These guys said, nope, we're going to start from the very beginning, and we're going to the best of their ability, plow through every episode possible of this show. And we're up to, we're in the middle of season 6, almost done with season 6? Seven. Right.
Towards the back half, I think.
Mm-hmm. Time flies. So you guys get the idea to do this. And it's not just them sitting around and discussing this like a lot of podcasts are. They put a hell of a lot of work into this. They're watching the commentaries. They're doing the research online. They're finding obscure audio clips from maybe one of the cast members was interviewed on a TV show or a radio show or something like that, and it ties into what they do. They break down each single episode to the bone. Every reference, every maybe hidden joke that's in the artwork that you're watching. There's a sign on the background that maybe represented something that you didn't know at the time when you were a kid watching it initially, and now as you grow up, you go, oh, that's what that means. You know, all these little hidden Easter eggs that were in the show from day one. These guys have perfected the art of going, look, there's nerdy, there's uber nerdy, and then there's these guys who just are now, I think you're officially historians.
We have a kind of madness, I think you can classify it as.
Yeah. I mean, Bob and I both watched the show just so much and just memorized everything. But we're also like journalists. I will say that. I'll say journalist. And so we start with just rote memorization of the entire show and knowing what the commentaries are, and then we try to go from there. Like, and Bob and me both agree on this feeling of like, this is the one time we're ever going to talk about this show. We're not going to do another episode about this episode of the show, so we can't miss a thing.
Right. And if we get one thing wrong, everyone will let us know.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's what the internet and social media does.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
They don't comment on their own. They're just there to tell you what you did wrong.
Now we've gotten to the point where if we even pause for a second to be like, it's a reference to that movie, and then we're just like, okay, pause.
Yeah,
we'll look this up. We'll cut this later.
We can leave no lingering questions because every comment will be the answer,
right?
And we'll have to respond like, we know, please.
You get mentions. It's radioactive man, jerk.
Funny, I shouldn't have been able to hear that. Yeah. Sorry.
No, it's fine. So where you guys started were, very humble beginnings with this show, and it was a labor of love, I guess you could say, because you can hear back. You go and you hear the first season. Subscribe to the Patreon. We'll give the information in a little bit here. The first season is available only through their Patreon. It's not up for free download anymore. But if you go back and listen to that first season, which is a rough season, people either love it or they don't. But it was necessary to get it to where it was going to go. I think we've talked about this. One of my favorite episodes ever was in the first season, and a lot of people don't have that. And that was the one where they went to go buy the RV. And
all the while,
yeah. And the simple animation of where they were going to try to trap a rabbit in the woods. And then it flung the rabbit across the forest, and then there's just a pause, and then you see it kind of fall through the background, and he turns and goes, okay, that didn't work. So now I was like, what is this? And then to the fact that my dad even laughed at it when we watched it, I was like, wow, this is really something.
That was the first truly cartoony episode. I believe John Swartzwelder wrote that. He's really known for the more absurdist humor, but it was a fairly straight-laced and kind of wacky sitcom. But that episode, they lean into being a real cartoon, and I think they figured out what they could do from there.
Yeah. So this is, like I said, a real labor of love for you guys that started off as a cool idea, a passion project, and now you've turned this into a full-scale business. Before we get into all the content that you've created and where you're going with this, let's talk about the Patreon since we mentioned it there. What is the address for people to go and check it out?
You just have to go to patreon.com/Talking Simpsons, and all of our stuff is there.
What's on the Patreon? What are people getting out of it?
Oh, my goodness. Too many things. Well, okay, so we do every episode a week early and ad-free on the Patreon. So if you sign up there, you can get an RSS feed that lets you get those podcasts early. Same with our other podcast, What a Cartoon. And then there's a ton of exclusives, like we have been going through all the deleted scenes and seasons for the last couple. We do a season wrap-up. We did Talking Critic, where it went through every episode of The Critic, even the awful webisodes.
Yes.
We went through them. And those are just exclusively on the Patreon, as well as some videos where we're going through. We started at episode 1, but we realized we're not talking about the shorts. We never did the shorts, so we did video commentaries on all of the shorts. Well, all but 6. We've left 6 left now.
Mm-hmm. We've also done interviews with writers like Mike Scully, and we interviewed Bill Oakley twice, and people like Reed Harrison and Mimi Pond, and other people, Simpsons-related people as well.
Yeah, the inventor of Embiggen, Dan Graney, just chatted with him. Tons of cool interviews on there already, and we're working on more. That's something, once we started the Patreon, we were really freed up to really chase after big guests for stuff like that. And it's been really exciting.
Also on your Patreon is the season wrap-ups I do enjoy that you guys do. One of them, you even showed me something that I was trying to think that I actually see this once and I just forgot about it, and I realized I never saw it at all, where Oprah Winfrey was drawn onto The Simpsons. And when you guys were talking about it, I'm like, wait a minute, I thought I always find little things here and there that maybe I forgot or I just didn't know about. But that was a big deal that I did not know about, and that was a rarity. And that, I got to give kudos to you guys when you find this kind of stuff. Even, the most diehard Simpsons fans are going, wait, what? What are you talking about? What did they find? What are they talking about?
I guess Oprah was a much different show in 1990. She had the Ninja Turtles on at one point, so The Simpsons were not a stretch.
Yeah, though I hadn't seen it when it was new either, because I watched all television I could all the time, but in my daily viewing, I was probably watching some cartoon at the time Oprah aired, so I would never have even known The Simpsons were on Oprah. And I'm just glad diligent fans, taped it off of TV back then, because even that's one that's never even been put on the DVDs. Like, I wonder what the ownership of that clip even is now.
Yeah, I would have to imagine that it probably is under Harpo, but it was on loan to them from Gracie Films. So probably both have a say in it. So in order, how it is, like with any of the comic book stuff, Fox has permissions for one thing, Disney has another, and they're like, well, we're just not going to throw that little extra thing on there until we can get it all sorted out.
Yeah, no, that we find tons of cool stuff in there. We also, another of my favorites we found, Bob, I think, found that one in the season wrap-up, the intentionally deleted scene that they never were actually going to do of it was Bart fighting Hitler.
Yes, it was called Nazis on Tap, and it was supposed to be a parody of propaganda, but they only made it because Matt Groening hated Hitler jokes.
Yes.
And it was just made as a joke to annoy him.
It's such a great troll.
Yeah, he's being so unreasonable about this.
Oh, God. Yeah, there's tons of great finds like that, and just going through the commercials that aired in that year, or the games that came out, and also going through, I now just go through the entire year on Variety's archives and like, all right, where's one bit of Simpsons news in here?
All the scandals that pop up.
Yeah.
So again, go to their Patreon, check it out. There's all different tiers, and they're pretty affordable for what they're doing. The content, as we said, they go through episode, breaking everything down. I love when you guys apologize for going too long, because it really doesn't seem that long. And I said, why are they apologizing for this? They're getting, the listeners getting more bang for their buck, whether they're on the free feed or they're paying for the Patreon, which, by the way, also, you get the episodes a week early if you're on the Patreon feed. If you're on the free feed, that's fine. You get them, the week they're supposed to come out, but they have the commercials and everything in there. So you can do either one. But the fact that you apologize for that, I always laugh, because there's no reason to apologize for that. I like the fact that, like, you almost hit an hour and a half on one episode, and I was like, this is great. They could keep going. I didn't even notice the time while I was listening to it.
I think an hour 53 is our longest episode, maybe
on ad free.
Yeah.
We just, the most recent Sideshow Bob was an hour 53. Sideshow Bob's Less Gleaming, though the episode that the Two Bad Neighbors George Bush one was 151. So we haven't broken 2 hours yet, just yet. I think maybe the Who Shot Mr. Burns also was nearing.
That's when you hit the $15,000 tier on Patreon. We'll go 2 hours every time.
3 hours.
Well, I mean, we're also really appreciative of our guests who, well, they're totally into it. And when we're not just apologizing to the listeners sometimes, but when we finish with a guest, we're like, I'm really sorry that lasted that long. Like, why? I had a great time is usually the reply.
You do all these episodes, and at the time when I discovered you, I think you were already in the 3rd season, so I had a lot to catch up on, and then I got you guys on the air. The only other Simpsons podcast I saw that was active was another one in Australia, which we kind of verbally pummeled live to the United States and Canada. But there were other handful of people attempting to do Simpsons podcasts that only maybe went a handful of episodes, and they just kind of stopped. What was the drive to keep this going before you had the Patreon and everything else coming in? What was the drive to keep this going for as long as you've been doing it?
I think, not to speak for Henry, but I think we are just both podcast addicts. We love listening to podcasts and we love making them. And we honestly just wanted to have the best and most comprehensive Simpsons podcast out there.
Yeah, we were just dedicated to doing, and the thought of stopping made no sense to me.
Yeah.
I mean, we did it on top of our full-time jobs, and we're very blessed that we were able to stop those and be able to get people to follow us to Patreon and support us to get to do it full time, and that's been great. But we would do this anyway. Bob and I have joked about this together many times of just like these are words in our brains we have to get out, or we'll lose our minds.
It's partially therapy. That's true.
Yes. Yeah, I do want to say there is at least one other really good Simpsons podcast out there I like, which is called Everything's Coming Up Simpsons.
Allie Gertz's podcast.
Yeah, and she's great. They're based in LA. What I like about, they've had on other cool folks, and I also am complimenting them because they, unprompted, like I was a listener and just liked it, but unprompted, like they promoted our podcast as a really cool one.
That was really
great. I saw that they've been doing live shows now, or they started to do live shows. I know you guys have been doing that recently, and we'll get into that in a second. But I just saw something they were doing Chicago not too long ago, and they were selling tickets, and they sold the thing out, which was amazing for a live podcast in a theater or club to talk about a television show. That's where we are with entertainment nowadays.
Yeah, I mean, I just read an article. I forget who published it, but it was essentially saying podcasters are the venues. I mean, minus the sex and the drugs and other stuff like that.
Millions of dollars.
Like selling out concert halls, selling out, venues, stuff like that. I mean, we go to podcast shows a lot when they come here.
Yeah. I've gone to a few. It was our dream to get to do live podcasts, which we did this year first with SF Sketch Fest, the San Francisco Sketch Fest.
Well, I was going to say that you're in San Francisco. Sketch Fest is one of the biggest shows that happens out there. I know when Chris Hardwick was still involved with Nerdist, they used to do a lot of things out there, and that was the place you would see live readings for an animated show, like Family Guy and Animaniacs and things like that. Were all at Sketch Fest.
Yeah, there's tons of great stuff there, and they started opening up more and more to podcasts each year. And I'd never had the guts to apply before, and after I did, I was like, oh wow, we got it like that. And it made me wish I had a little more courage before. And we got to interview Dana Gould, writer for the show, plus an amazing comedian in his own right.
Right.
You mentioned, I don't want to promote another Simpsons podcast all the time, but the live show you mentioned. That's the one. I am a huge wrestling fan. Bob couldn't give a crap about wrestling.
That's true.
But at Everything's Coming Up Simpsons Chicago show, they had CM Punk.
Yep.
I actually heard about that.
And I was like, oh, no. Like, I got to get another wrestler on a podcast.
You know what's great about Chicago is that if you have a good live show, CM Punk shows up.
Yeah.
We did a live show for Opie and Anthony years ago in Chicago. And we found out the day of the show that he knew Jim Norton on our program, and he said, all of you guys in Chicago, I'd like to come by, but he wants to keep it a secret. Okay, great. So they tell us, and Sam Roberts on the show and myself, big wrestling fans, we're like, CM Punk's coming to a live show. This is amazing. So we were told to go wait out in the back. I was out in the back with some of the security for the venue. And the back was the loading area, where nobody was really allowed to go or wanted to go. There's a smelly dumpster and just crates and pallets and stuff that lay in the back. So we're waiting for him. So we're expecting, him to drive up or, black tinted Suburban showing up and then he'd be dropped off. There's just this little whiny noise that we start hearing, and this guy shows up on a Vespa, right?
Wow.
He has this white Vespa with a helmet, and we're like, who is this guy? He takes the helmet off. It's Punk. And we're like, oh my God. And he said, you do not tell anybody I rode a Vespa. And I said, nope, not at all. But it's been so many years, so it doesn't matter at this point. But it was one of the funniest things. You see this guy with a little wobbly Vespa come up, and it's CM Punk, one of the biggest wrestlers at the time and of all time.
Oh God, man! Now I want to have him as a guest even more so, just to see that Vespa.
We know his secret now.
Yes, you have to show up in Chicago and do a live show, and it's like the bat signal. If you mention CM Punk or play Cult of Personality, he just shows up.
He'll at least be in the audience,
right? But with their live show stuff, if they come to San Francisco, it's kind of a no-brainer if they did maybe a crossover thing with you guys.
Yeah, we've been talking about going to LA and possibly figuring out some stuff, at least going to Universal Studios and, doing podcasts about the Simpsons world they have there.
Yeah, Bob's never ridden the Simpsons ride. I've only ridden it in Orlando, not in the Hollywood one.
You guys should take, in a backpack with you, should take a recorder with 2 mics and just record yourself walking around Springfield. Totally.
We should. I maybe even just get a simple. Well, I mean, I guess our phones could just film stuff too. But yeah, I mean, Bob and me, also we've interviewed so many Simpsons writers, but most of them live in L.A. and it's almost like, well, if we went to L.A. and just rented a hotel room, maybe we could talk them into be like, we're not murderers. Like, just come to our hotel room. We'll record this.
Yeah, the podcast community is more open than I would say the radio community, at least. That if you guys are on the same page for the most part and good people, they love doing crossover stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've had lots of success recently, especially with some big guests from other podcasts coming on our show.
It is a very collaborative industry because we are all very lucky to be doing this, and we want to help each other, I think. So it's very friendly.
Yeah, we just had on Alex Navarro from Giant Bomb, who does like tons of amazing video game stuff over at Giant Bomb and hosts millions of podcasts. We had on the guys from the Chapo Trap House. We had on, we're about to have on, or depending on when this airs, we're about to have on co-host of We Hate Movies, which is such a hilarious movie podcast.
Yeah, Steven Sadak.
Yes, yeah.
Oh, that's cute.
Yeah, they've been super. The podcast community has been very inviting, I would say.
And it's great to know that they know our show sometimes.
Yeah.
You don't have to explain it to them; they come ready.
Mm-hmm. All right, what is the biggest surprise that you found out somebody knows your show and likes your show?
I mean, definitely the Steven Sadak interview we did, just because like I'm used to giving just some quick notes of like, well, this is what we do this, we do this, we do this, and this time when we started, Steven, he's like, oh no, here's this is this next segment, right? Or this is line of the episode. I was like, wow, he really knows this.
Bringing jokes to the show and everything like that. Yeah, he's really a fan, so we respect that.
Yeah, and also, I mean, the Ali Gortz one, that was pretty great too, and it's also always nice to hear when we finished an interview with a Simpsons writer who we respect so much, like Dan Graney or Mike Scully or Bill Oakley. They end it by saying like, I'll be back anytime, or let me know again. And they're always ready to do it again, which maybe they're being polite, but it's nice.
It's a good sign they're not trying to get off the Skype call as fast as possible. So it's flattering.
Yeah.
I know I tried to hook you up with Mike Reese not too long ago, and he kind of, I guess, politely passed at the moment.
He was busy writing a book about his Simpsons memories, so I kind of get it. But I don't want to promise anything, but crossing our fingers around the release of his book, we might actually get Mike Reese.
Perfect. Glad to hear that, because I didn't know he was writing the book. I just saw on social media recently he went to go see that live Margaritaville thing on Broadway, and he was saying how awful it was. And he goes, all they did was repackage SpongeBob on Broadway.
I just, I had a fan spotting of him when I got to interview Dana Gould at the New York City Comic Con. He just came by and to say hi to Dana Gould, and I wanted to say like, hey, you're Mike Reese, but it's like, if I ever want to interview him in the future, maybe I'll just let him walk away.
Let it be. Yeah, that's how I found him. To get him on my show. I think we've told this story, but I'll tell it again real quick. Where SiriusXM was, right across the street is News Corp, Fox News, and they have a little corporate park right on the corner of 48th and 6th, and they were doing a big statue dedication, which was a bronze Bart Simpson head that Nancy Cartwright made. It was one in New York, and they did one in their office in Los Angeles. So this was a big deal, a lot of press and everything, and I was going down there to cover it, and I'm standing down there. I'm in the press area. They're getting ready for the big unveiling, and I look over, and I see Mike Reese, and I'm like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. So I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna go talk to him. What's the worst is gonna happen, right? So I'm starting to talk to him for a little bit, and we watched the unveiling, and I said, well, it was great meeting you. Could I get a photo? Yeah, he was really cool about it. I said, I have to go back to work. I'm going to go do an interview with John Lovitz. He's like, John's here. I said, yeah. He's like, could I come? And I said, yeah. And he goes, hang on a second. He turns around and he goes, Jeff, John Lovitz is over at Sirius. We're going to go say hi to him. And he's like, okay, great. And there's Jeff Martin. Right?
It's right there.
Oh,
right there. I'm like, oh my God. So now I'm bringing Jeff Martin up. And also that day is Nancy Cartwright, who came up from the Fox unveiling to Sirius. So now I got everybody in the same room. I said, this is it was a perfect storm. And, we talked, the audio's up online. We talked about trying to bring the critic back and their times with the Simpsons and what have you. And I had, like I always do with my figures that aren't open, and I wanted to get John Lovitz to sign it, and he thought they were for him. So he put it in his bag and started to walk out. And I said, "Oh, John, those aren't yours." And he goes, "Oh," and then he puts it back on the counter. And he was nice enough to sign it, but. That was a long way to go to tell that story. But anyway.
Mike Reese, I love interviews with him because he essentially retired from TV writing 20 years ago. So he just says whatever he wants to say. He has nothing to hide anymore.
The best are when you see his stories about working on The Tonight Show, him and Al Jean. They just hated that time period. They loved working at Gary Shandling and then hated The Tonight Show.
Yeah, I love in multiple interviews when they're like oral histories of something, and they're interviewing Reese and Gene together. Al Jean, who still runs The Simpsons, he's being very nice and cordial and just like, well, I won't name names. And then it goes right to Mike Reese, and Mike Reese is like, I'm naming names. This guy's...
I've got FU money, as they say in the business.
He does.
Your interviews, who's been the hardest to get? I mean, obviously, Mike wasn't... I wouldn't say Mike was hard because he declined for a reason that made sense. But other people, I'm sure you've tried to reach out to. Who's been hard? Who's been difficult to get on the program?
Well, a dream get for me would be Dave Merkin, definitely any showrunner of the show. And, right. And he's just really hard to reach because he is he doesn't really use Twitter. You need people addicted to Twitter sometimes to really get them, it's the closest thing to a public email you have.
Did we get all of our interviews through Twitter? Via Twitter?
Majority, if they weren't hooked up to us by Eric, very
that's
nicely.
True.
Yes, it was usually through that. Also, another one that I was sad we didn't get was John Vitti, who I asked him a while ago. This was when the Angry Birds movie was out, and he was tweeting a lot more because he wrote the Angry Birds movie. And also, John Vitti, for listeners who don't know, he wrote a million classic Simpsons episodes, probably most importantly, Mr. Plow. And I really wanted us to interview him, so I reached out. And his response was very nice. Like, he didn't even need to reply to me, but his response was just like, well, I feel like I said everything I needed to say on the commentaries, so it's cool. No thanks.
Yeah, he was nice about
it. But maybe, I still got DM access to him. Maybe I'll shoot him again. But it's writers, animators, though. Those are the ones that have been also a little harder to get a hold of as well. We've yet to have any of the animators, just the writers. And I really would love to talk to something like Rich Moore or Susie Dieter or Jim Reardon. Oh my God, Jim Reardon, Wes Archer, all the major creators on the animation side would be so great.
What about Al Jean? Have you reached out to him? Because he's constantly on Twitter.
I haven't yet. I was kind of hoping to get Mike Reese and then Al Jean. I was thinking, I hadn't talked about this too much with Bob, but the idea of if we can tell Al Jean we got Mike Reese, then maybe that'll be easier to get him. I think I always worry of he's a busy guy with The Simpsons, but he does tweet a lot compared to most.
That's how I got him on my show twice, was just tweeting him, and then then he would DM me. And the first time was in our first year, because I was a big Simpsons fan. I still am a big Simpsons fan. That I said I just would like to talk for a little bit. He called in. We talked for a little while about everything going on. And then the second time was when we were going, right before we were going on there, Leonard Nimoy died. And I just reached out to him. I said, hey, I don't know if you're getting a lot of press coming at you, but, with the passing of Leonard Nimoy, was an iconic episode with Monorail. Would you care to call in and we can talk about Leonard Nimoy for a little bit? And he said, yeah. And then he came on, and that's what we did. So reaching out to Twitter, Al seems pretty friendly for people who are really passionate or into The Simpsons.
I feel like once we interview every other showrunner, he'll have to talk to us.
Whittling him down.
I did hear...
We've gotten 2 so far out of what?
Yeah.
4?
Out of the 6 living ones.
Yeah.
Al Jean, Mike Reese, Bill Oakley, Josh Weinstein, David Merkin, and then and Mike Scully and Sam Simon's dead. So it's only 6 living ones, and
we got 2.
We've got 2, hoping on a third. And I mean, we tried to get Josh as well, but I think too that Josh is he's making a show now for Netflix. He's making that Disenchantment show, which I can't wait to see.
I have to say, on the subject of interviews, my favorite moment was I got a chance to apologize to Mike Scully for complaining about his episodes online like 20 years ago, and he was very nice. He was like, I mean, everyone was nice, but Mike Scully is such a genuine, nice guy. If you think you dislike him, listen to our interview. Like, he is such a friendly guy.
He was so friendly. It was great. I also loved apologizing him to it because, you know, we take The Simpsons very seriously, and that was his reaction, just like, hey, that's passion. We appreciate passion. He didn't take it personally, but it was a nice soul cleansing kind of moment.
Yeah.
Did you happen to see the Zen Diaries of Gary Shandling, the 4-hour documentary that Judd Apatow put out for HBO?
No.
I really want to see it though. Yeah,
there's some pieces, I think, in the second 2 hours where they were talking more about Gary's television history. There's some pieces where they're talking to Al and Mike, I guess, in somebody's office. But I'm watching that, but then I'm pausing it because I'm looking at the memorabilia that they have in the background there, and it's nothing like fancy that you would think they would have. Like, oh, here's a signed script from, you know, when Paul McCartney was on the show, or here's a photo from, you know, all the Beatles that were on the program. No, it's like, well, here's a plush version of Santa's Little Helper. I'm like, well, I haven't seen that one before, but still very unimpressive for the collectibles that they did have in the office.
No giant marble statues of Homer in the corner.
Nothing.
You know, I need to watch that because I just thinking about it now, I bet I wouldn't have watched The Simpsons from day one if it wasn't for the Gary Shandling show, because I at like 6 or 7, my parents were watching the replays of it that were on Fox then, and through that we got advertised Tracy Ullman to then watch the silly cartoons on Tracy Ullman to then watch the Christmas special.
Henry,
it probably never would have happened.
It was the same exact thing for me, where I, you know, as a little kid, Gary Shandling showing and the first episode I saw was where he was making fun of baby Jessica, where he fell down the well. Gary was down a well, and his family were just like not interested in trying to pull him out of the well. But I was watching Gary Shandling on Fox, not realizing it was a Showtime show. I just thought it was a Fox show, and that did lead to pushing Tracy Ullman and finding the shorts. I do want to ask, though, watching the Tracy Ullman show and watching the shorts, if you look at it now, wasn't enough to push you to watch The Simpsons starting and debuting as their own series. What made the connection to start watching it from did you start it from day one? Are you old enough to see it from day one?
Oh, yeah. I was born in 82, so I was 7 when the 1989 Christmas special aired.
Same here. I was a day one. I was not a Tracy Ullman viewer because we didn't have cable at the time, but I was day one Christmas special viewer, and every episode up until like season 19 I saw day one.
I think, you know, rewatching the shorts now, I see what the appeal would have been to me at age 7 of just like, this is a cartoon.
Right.
And it's a cartoon on late night, so I love watching this. And the cartoon, the shorts are fun in their animation. They're certainly not deep compared to the show. Like, they're very surface level compared to the show, and very different in a lot of ways.
Yeah, they're basically like animated versions of Life in Hell.
Yes, yeah. But they're fun, goofery, and so that pulled me in. Like, the idea of seeing 30 minutes of that was like, oh my God, this is going to be the greatest thing ever. And it was. But I think that's how kind of, I was at 7, I was at just the right level to enjoy The Simpsons as just a goofy cartoon show. Right. And then it stealthily was much smarter than I was ready for at ages 7 and 8.
I don't know. Again, I don't know what made the transition from the shorts to wanting to invest in the full-length show from day one, but it did. I look back now, I'm like, I can't see the connection as to why, but I was one of these guys, I don't know if either one of you were, but I taped everything on VHS tape. And I knew from the first episode, which was the Christmas episode, to tape everything, and then knew how to save it. Like, I would record that tape to another tape so I could pull the commercials out, and then I would just have, you know, you set it on not the best quality, but you set it on like EP for 6 hours, and without the commercials, you're getting maybe, you know, 10 episodes to 12 episodes per tape.
Yeah, it was... it was my favorite thing to watch after would just be putting on many episodes of Talking Simpsons. I give my own Henry oral history of my VHS, saying, well, I don't remember this joke because I failed to record it in the first airing. I think my parents probably taped the first two seasons. My mom probably taped the first two seasons. And then when I was 10, I graduated to being old enough to control the recording myself at that point. So
I had
until you could steal everything from the internet.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say until you could steal something from the internet. I think I had just an entire wall of my bedroom was just stacks of VHS tapes. It was kind of sick.
No, I had them in Foot Locker trunks, these big like purple and blue plastic trunks with the wheels. I would just store them in there. So I one day I was like, I could take these to college. I had the thing too. Sorry, go ahead.
No, it felt bad leaving mine behind when I moved out from Florida. Moved to the Bay Area from Florida. I was like, I'm not buying a VCR when I move there, so I guess I'll never watch these again. It was a sad growing up moment. I had
it's kind of weird. Like for anyone who's ever made a mixtape, say in a regular audio mixtape, you can, and you've listened to that mixtape a million times. Anytime you hear that song come on the radio or played somewhere, you automatically think the next song is the song that was on your mixtape. Like you're waiting to go into the next thing, and it never does. So it's kind of frustrating. But as far as taping on VHS with The Simpsons, if you didn't tape an episode at that time, sometimes they weren't in, like syndication was still like 2-3 years away. When they would just do basic summer reruns on a Sunday night, sometimes they didn't air certain episodes. And there was one episode in the first season that I missed and I never saw until I don't even know how long. It was years because they didn't even have it in syndication when they put it out. It was the Ms. Botts episode with Penny Marshall playing the babysitter that would rob you. I don't understand why it wasn't in syndication and why it wasn't there, but I had to wait for the DVD set to come out before I finally saw the entire thing.
Wow.
They hated that episode. It might have just been your local market who didn't want to show it, but they were not a fan of that episode. It almost destroyed the show based on the production difficulties they had with it.
The lost one in my tapes was the Grandpa's Girlfriend Dies episode, Old Money, because we were like on a family trip or something and we missed the episode and we didn't record it. And so I didn't have it on a tape until probably the second year of syndication. I finally saw I was going through TV Guide in the pre-internet era or my local newspapers, whatever, and it said like Old Money. I'm like, that's the episode. Okay, I am not that I was a social butterfly who had things going on at 5:30 in the afternoon, but I was like, well, I definitely got to take this one. Though it made me sad knowing that I lost jokes. Like I've sometimes been kind of a jerk on our podcast, shaming people, guests who really got into the show in syndication. Where I'm just like, well, that's like you're watching it with like 2 minutes of jokes missing. That's a balderization of this thing.
It's not pure enough.
It's not pure.
Always so picky, but that's what being a fan is usually all about. We want to jump back to the mention I had of Al and Mike doing the stuff for Gary Shandling and looking in their office to see their collectibles. What do you, if you do, collect anything Simpsons-wise, obviously outside of the episodes themselves? What do you have around your house, your office? What do you guys collect?
I mostly just have a few token things from the early days of merchandise, like the 1990 Bart Simpson doll, some of the Burger King toys. I really don't do a lot of collecting. I do have all of the DVDs that have been released to date, which is I consider a pretty good achievement. There's 18 of them so far.
There was a time when I had I was buying the toys or I was buying all the T-shirts, but the merch, not unlike my VHSs, they didn't come with me here, and I kind of dropped off buying the merch. But now what I've been collecting actually have been in the old rebuying your childhood type things. I have been buying a lot of the old Simpsons comics and even the Simpsons comics that predate that, which is the Simpsons magazine, Simpsons Illustrated, which I, as a stupid 9-year-old, I was like, these are funny pictures, and I cut up all my comics and put them on like my wall and stuff. And now I have the complete ones. I'm like, oh my gosh, this Simpsons Illustrated, especially the first issue of Simpsons Illustrated, they have no Simpsons news to deal with. So there's like, in the news, some man named Simpson works at a nuclear power plant, or something nice and friendly about O.J. Simpson happened in 1990.
Those magazines are great, by the way.
They're great.
Yeah.
Yes. And the original comics that came out in '94 are really great too. That's also on my list. I have been chasing some of the original people who worked on those Simpsons comics to try to get an interview with them, because they were doing such great work in those early Simpson comics. I'm big fans of what the Simpsons comics are, just fun in general, but the first year means so much to me of Bongo comics in 1994.
For myself, I have a handful of things. I'm not super crazy with it. I have, I think Henry and I have talked about this when you guys were doing the Who Shot Mr. Burns 2-part episode. Mm-hmm. I have the original Entertainment Weekly fold out from 1-800-COLLECT, and it's
oh, nice.
Yeah, so it's I had it. They do that pressing to make it, take all the creases out and everything. It's framed under museum glass, so it's preserved. But it's police tape everywhere, and has random people from Springfield with a magnifying glass over Mr. Burns. It was a sweepstakes that they were doing, and it says, who shot Mr. Burns, and it's just this amazing piece of artwork that you've never seen them do anything again, especially tied into a product. Now, not like the Butterfinger stuff or any of those things. This something could have been on its own a unique piece of art.
No, yeah, that's gorgeous. One other thing I remember of Simpsons merch I bought was I could not resist buying anything that said Bort on it at Universal Orlando at the Simpsons Land. Anything, the Bort keychain and the Bort magnet. I actually bought a Bort magnet for Bob. It was a Surly Duff.
It's on my fridge right now, but... Man, so we're doing very well on Patreon, but if I was a rich man, I would invest in Simpsons animation cells. I've never had one, and I know there are a lot, and I would want to get one from like a good classic episode, but I also don't have like $1,000+ to throw away, so it's a pipe dream.
Wait, Eric just ran to grab something off the wall.
Somebody gave me this as a birthday present years ago, and I was amazed that this existed. But it is an actual Simpsons cell, and it's a couch gag where they're babies. They're all infants.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. That's an amazing gift.
Yeah.
Wow.
Just below the border has the coating for the I guess for the animation process, the frame and whatever, and then on top it has the 20th Century Fox imprint on it, and of course Matt Groening's signature on it there. But
that cell is incredible. If I had, I don't know what scene I would want to pick a cell from. Definitely, maybe the one of Homer being force-fed donuts. That's maybe one of my favorite drawings ever.
I would love anything from Who Shot Mr. Burns, because that is my favorite episode, part 1. Anything with maybe anything with Mr. Burns in it, like him crushing the tiny Springfield would be great.
For a while, I saw some auction house out in Los Angeles had a Simpsons cell that it was the couch gag where they're running in and the Flintstones are sitting on the couch. And I was like, geez,
that's a great one.
That's going to be nowhere in my price range that I could even try to afford to bid on that.
I'd also, another one I'd love is that Mr. Burns in Homer Goes to College, where he is sitting in his chair on the board. Like, that chair is beautiful.
I also have I don't know if you guys got to go to this when they did Live at the Hollywood Bowl. Somebody got me the poster artwork that they were giving out at the Hollywood Bowl. So I have that up there. I got the movie poster. And really the only other things I have are I have the stamps when the post office initiated those. That's framed. I have a promotional 8x10 that they were sending out to, I guess, to the affiliates or whatever, where moving men are carrying their couch with them sitting on it, saying we're moving to Thursdays when they were going to compete against the Cosby
I love
Show.
That. Oh, that is such a great ad. Oh my God.
I
history.
I love those stamps though, because they are Matt Groening ass drawings. They're not like nice drawings you'd see on merchandise. They're the creators' interpretations of those characters that you don't see on TV.
Yeah, let me see.
Yeah, I love those Matt Groening. Oh, what? Oh yeah! Wow! The couch is moving. I remember that drawing.
Stuff, yeah.
Oh, yes.
And the writers would lament that change forever.
Yeah,
Sorry,
I mean,
it wasn't moving
took them
to
out
Thursdays. It was moving back to Sundays.
Okay, well they like that change.
Yes.
Yeah, I did too. I didn't like watching it on Thursday. I guess for our family it was like watching it and then changing the channel to Seinfeld. That's what our Thursday night viewing habits were for Simpsons. We didn't stick around for Martin. No offense to the Martin Lawrence or the Martin Lawrence show, but it was just like, let's go to Seinfeld.
Well, apparently they're trying to bring it back, Henry. So if you missed it, it's going to be all new to you.
Really, Martin? Ooh,
anything from the 90s, it's fair game.
Everything from the 90s will be remade. That's why on our most recent episode, I was like, why isn't there a Biodome 2 yet? It's got to be coming.
We are the new sad boomers who must achieve our childhoods again.
It's true.
So we've been talking to Henry Gilbert and Bob Mackey, the creators and hosts of the Talking Simpsons. Is Chris Antista going to return? I know he's in the middle of relocating and sort of a new life direction that he's going with right now, but he said he would be back at some point.
No, I mean, he kind of had to move to Florida for personal reasons, and we wish him well, and he's I think still trying to figure out his like remote recording setup anyway at this point. But Chris hadn't been on a lot of our like Patreon exclusive stuff or the other side things too, just because Chris is real busy with Laser Time.
Right.
So, we wish him well on his Florida adventure and all that, but we're kind of having to we're moving forward without him though. But we, no hard feelings.
Yeah, for sure.
That is with Chris. Yeah.
Again, go to anywhere podcasts are found. You can download Talking Simpsons. Support their Patreon as well for Talking Simpsons. I also want to get into your newer ventures. You guys just hit a new goal. You were telling me right before we went on here. You hit a new goal for your Patreon.
Well, it's more of a personal goal, but we're now in the 5-figure territory, which is awesome.
Yeah.
We're going to actually, tomorrow, as of this recording, we're going to have some new goals on Patreon and rework some stuff just to point out our future plans. And it's all good news. Nothing is being cut or anything like that. We're just trying to let people know what the future has in store for our network.
And last month, though, we had hit a previous goal, and we started our new podcast, What a Cartoon, which we're doing on top of Talking Simpsons every week, which was really like, we love doing Simpsons, but we also love kind of all cartoons.
Yeah.
But obviously we can't do every episode of every cartoon ever.
People want us to, though.
Not with that attitude.
But there's just but so we started that one, called it What a Cartoon. We started, the first episode is one of the best episodes of Batman the Animated Series ever, Heart of Ice, which I just love. And then the second one was Bob's pick.
Yeah, King of the Hill, Peggy's Headache. So the good news is for us, though, every time we do one episode of something, there's always at least one comment that says, okay, now do the rest. So yes. I feel like we're on the right track.
And I want to. After doing King of the Hill, I was like, we should do every episode.
I'm ready to rewatch all King of the Hill now.
Yeah. Or Beavis and Butthead. We recorded Beavis and Butthead while I was like, this show is way funnier than I even remember.
We were giddy and punch drunk while recording that Beavis and Butthead episode. It was great.
Let me ask you a quick hit with Beavis and Butthead, then we'll get back to What a Cartoon. Whenever you bring up Beavis and Butthead to people, it's weird. Sometimes people don't know what it is. And even our age, they're like, oh, I don't really remember a lot about that show. Or they would just say, oh, yeah, they laughed at music videos. They really didn't take it seriously like people did with other animated shows. But for me, whenever somebody brings up Beavis and Butthead, I have a couple of like select things that I know really stood out to me about that show. Do you guys have that for yourselves, of being big fans of it? If somebody says, what's your favorite Beavis and Butthead, do you have something specific that's not Frog Baseball or Cornholio?
Oh, yeah, for sure. In fact, the episode we did, one of our backers chose the episode, but it was only one 5-minute long cartoon. So I chose my favorite, which is Pregnant Pause, in which Beavis thinks he's pregnant and spends the entire episode freaking out about the possibility of having a child.
Oh, no!
When really he's constant.
Yes. It's so silly. The show is like just so secretly brilliant, and I hope our episode helps people rediscover it, because we just were having so much fun with it. It's not as stupid as it seems, and Mike Judge is like one of the most brilliant voice actors I've ever heard, and just revisiting that cartoon made me rediscover that as well.
Yeah, one of my favorites that I watched a million times, because I didn't tape every Beavis and Butthead, but I had the tape of their Christmas special, and their It's a Wonderful Life parody.
Yes.
Where Clarence is trying to convince him, like, you should die. Like, everyone's happier if you're not alive. But they won't die. And he's just like, oh, come on, just die.
The Halloween one is good too. It's basically like a Treehouse of Horror version of Beavis and Butthead, in which they are killed at the end. It's a great little horror story.
The Beavis and Butthead was such. Oh yeah,
that Christmas episode was part of a DVD release. They had like a couple of Christmas episodes plus Christmas music videos that they were commenting on. But that thing's hard to find. I was lucky enough that I never threw it away. I had it when it came out, but that Christmas DVD is very hard to find.
Yeah, I think the original airing actually was broken up by letters to Santa Butthead, and he was like whipping Beavis just up like a reindeer.
Yep.
It was great.
Someone asked him, "Dear Santa Butthead, what happens when the reindeer poop in the sky?" He's like, "It falls to the ground and goes plop."
I liked someone asked for a little brother, and he was like, "Can do."
Yeah, the show was much smarter than people. If you just remember like all the scatological humor, which there was a ton of, you kind of miss how smart it was and how well animated it was too.
My mom hated that show with a passion. And she used to say, "How do you sit there and watch this? It's idiotic. Don't you find it insulting? That's how they're viewing your generation." I said, "No, I'd rather enjoy this. It's very funny."
My mom would just scream with laughter and just keep saying, "They're so stupid." So she got it.
One of my favorite things was when they would work, and I guess it was foreshadowing because it was when they would work at the fast food restaurant. My latter years of high school, I wound up working at McDonald's to make money to pay for your car and what have you. But there were those cutscenes where you're just seeing the ceiling fan and they're just placing orders, and you see the order go flying into the ceiling fan, and then it would pan down to them, and the whole restaurant is just covered with food that they destroyed.
That's a great. I have to say though, the reboot from 2011 is fantastic, and it just sort of came and went, and I watched it all, and they didn't miss a beat. It was still like they were still stuck in the 90s. They did not have an HDTV or cell phones or the internet. It was just like watching Beavis and Butthead as they were.
Mm-hmm. I have that box set. I had never opened it. I should definitely look at the when they brought them back, and I didn't do that. That's totally on me. But as far as the music stuff they did, there was a few things that really stuck out to me. Like there was an old rapper. I think he was a one and done guy. His name was Saget, and he had a song called Funk Dat. And they would just sit there and they would just make up their own stupid like stories, and then they would go, "Funk Dat." And they're just totally getting the song wrong, and they're just going back and forth, and you're watching the video happen, but they're just getting everything wrong and just yelling "Funk Dat."
Those are so much fun. A lot of that was just Mike Judge improvising in the booth with writers around him, like feeding him lines and him doing his own stuff. But he even said, like, we had to make Beavis and Butthead smarter for the music videos because they had to be, like, intelligent enough to critique them in some way.
Right. There was one, again, another, I think, one and done. The rapper was named MC 900 Foot Jesus, and the song was called If I Only Had a Brain. And all Beavis did was he liked the catchy bass line. So he was just singing the bass line through the whole episode, and Butthead is trying to make jokes, and Beavis is just doing the bass line. So Butthead's getting mad, and he's telling him to stop, and then he beats the crap out of Beavis, and then Beavis shakes his head and starts doing the bass line again, and Butthead then starts doing the bass line, and that's just how it ends.
I have that bass line in my head to this day because of that video.
Oh god, that video it's the one where the guy puts himself in a box and ships himself somewhere, right?
Just sort of like rolling down a hill or whatever.
Oh my god, yeah. Wow. I completely forgot that one. I liked when they would have a like Ozzy, they'd have an Ozzy music video, and they'd just be like, they just loved it. It wasn't just them saying this is stupid.
Yeah.
Like, I would watch those a little less because I loved the cartoon so much that sometimes I would be mad of like, well, I've seen this music video before. I want to see the next 40 seconds of this cartoon.
Yeah, let's go to Stewart's house.
Yes. I was more Stewart as a kid than Beavis.
Same here.
Yeah. Let's go back to What a Cartoon, your latest venture. It's part of the Patreon Simpsons feed, or is it its own standalone feed?
It's its own feed. It's its own free feed. But if you're on the Patreon at the $5 level, along with all the other bonus podcasts, you get that a week ahead of time, along with the advanced episode of Talking Simpsons.
Yeah. So you can find What a Cartoon on, Stitcher, iTunes, Google Play, all those places.
If you have a podcast app, it'll be in there. Just look for it.
Yeah, and we've got a ton more cool ones coming. Somebody asked if we're going to do bad cartoons too, and we did too. Bobby's World, which not a great cartoon.
I think in our history
underwater the fish don't stink.
Yes, everyone remembers that. But I think in our history as podcasters, we've really podcasted more about bad cartoons on the whole. So now we're finally getting to talk about good cartoons.
It's weird to celebrate those instead of talking about, say, the Sonic Christmas special, the Sonic the Hedgehog Christmas special.
Right. Every year for my my other podcast, Retronauts, the classic gaming podcast, I do a bad video game Christmas special. I've been doing that for the past 5 years, and I think there's one left to do, but every year we have a real blast talking about terrible, terrible Christmas specials. Pac-Man,
Donkey Kong Country, Super Mario Brothers Super Show, all the worst cartoons.
What about the ones that were remember the I can't remember the guy's name. Was it Walter Lantz who did Woody Woodpecker?
That's Walter Lantz.
Yeah, Walter Lantz. He had that whole other world where it was Chilly Willy and then other characters that they came up with, and those other character cartoons were horrible because I think there was a walrus was one of them, and it's like nobody cared.
Yeah, I remember as a kid I was fine with seeing a Woody Woodpecker cartoon. I wanted to see that, but when you would watch those packaged cartoons together, you're like, and now it's time for his crappy friends. I was like, well, I don't want to see those guys. They suck.
God forbid Harvey cartoons.
Oh yeah. Or the Friday editions of Heathcliff when it was Riff Raff.
Oh God, yeah.
But if you were a young furry, you were really turned on by his girlfriend.
That's true.
Yes.
She was an awakening for some people. Yeah, I always hated those in the packages of Heathcliff as well when I rewatched them on Nickelodeon. Just like, well, this guy's just Heathcliff, but he has a hat.
Yeah.
Like, he's just a Heathcliff jerk.
They had no faith at Heathcliff.
No, they had. You know what else? It was like Johnny Carson. He did 4 nights, and the 5th night was the guest host. So that was like when Riff Raff would fit in. But Riff Raff was with all his friends in the neighborhood. They were just in the junkyard, but it was the same town as Heathcliff, and they never crossed paths except in the credits at the end.
That's right.
Yeah. I always wondered if that was because they're like, well, if we lose the Heathcliff license, we still got Riff Raff. We can use all those other characters.
I'm thinking it could have been that Mel Blanc was voicing Heathcliff. He was also like 80 years old, so it's like give the old man a break, write other characters.
I can see that.
Yeah.
Have Jay Leno voice Riff Raff.
Oh man, that'd be perfect.
I just Heathcliff's theme is in my head.
What a Cartoon was the title lifted off of the Bugs Bunny line? What a Maroon.
No.
Wow, that's a good story. I'm going to steal that as a story.
That could be a better story, but no, we based it on the Cartoon Network pilot program from the 90s, in which they would commission pilots and then just show them on the air as to not burn them off. And if they got a lot of hype, they would make them into series, but it was called What a Cartoon.
Yeah.
And like Dexter's Lab came from that, Powerpuff Girls, Cow and Chicken, Johnny Bravo, I believe. Like all the early cartoons is what they were called.
Wow.
So, and it was just a cool... It was an exciting statement of like, what a cartoon! Like that, it sounded like a cool, just a way to explain the show to us. Like, and we have a really cool theme song original theme song made by Hot Dad, who is this hilarious guy. You should look up his YouTube, folks. He does these hilarious covers to songs that sound nothing like the original songs. Or for wrestling fans, he did all these wrestler themes that make no sense. They're just like about like stories about John Cena that never happened. Like he's just such a fun guy who writes like kind of like synthy 80s parody music that just feels like my childhood to me.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, this is beautiful.
I've been told our theme song is too catchy, and I love hearing that.
It's too distracting from the rest of your show. I just want to listen to the theme song. What are some of the properties that you've been focusing on as far as What a Cartoon?
Well, we wanted to launch our first month with like some of the biggest animated shows, in our opinions at least. So we launched with Batman the Animated Series, King of the Hill, Ren and Stimpy, and I believe the fourth
Steven
one,
Universe.
Steven Universe. And after that, we have some patrons are requesting things at certain levels. If you are a certain level patron, you get to request an episode or possibly be on one. After that, we're sort of just like, well, what do we want to talk about, and what does our audience want to hear about? That's sort of how we're guiding it.
We have at least 2 years worth of favorite cartoons we could cover, and so before we even run out, like when some that are coming up, we're going to be doing, well, except Bobby's World, Beavis and Butthead, also the Venture Brothers, which we are huge fans of.
I'm huge fans of them too.
And also Star Wars: The Clone Wars, which honestly we weren't. It's a patron request, but sometimes it's fun to go into ones that we're not necessarily fans of. Not that we hate them either, but it's just like, oh, I don't know this thing. Let's, but still give the same kind of like super effort that me and Bob put into research, but on something that we don't necessarily know. And and we do like anime. Anime is a divisive topic for some folks, but we're big fans of it. So we're definitely going to do, like, I want to do a Cowboy Bebop one this year for sure. Cowboy
Bebop was one of those shows that was, what was it, Saturday night on Adult Swim, right? That they would do that? Because so Friday night you had all the weird, crazy animation stuff, and then Saturday night all the anime stuff showed up there, and I always meant to watch it because I knew people that did enjoy it, and I just never did. For some reason, the anime, I'm not opposed to it, but just if I had the choice to watch anime or not, I just didn't at that time.
I get that.
Yeah, I think it's a really good crossover show. I mean, now it's 20 years old, and I feel that it has a lot of crossover appeal because in terms of visuals and in terms of storytelling, it doesn't have a lot of the kind of cultural baggage that other anime has.
Right.
So if you're not used to those tropes and those, those stylizations, if you're of Western animation, you can easily jump into it, and it won't be that alienating for you.
Yeah, and I hope our episode of What a Cartoon can maybe turn people on to that. In general, I think on What a Cartoon we can. I want it to both appeal to people who like that show, but also get people to watch a show they're not watching. Like, I definitely heard that about when we did the King of the Hill episode. People who are super Simpsons fans were like, I never gave the show a chance, but now, wow, how funny. Or same with when we did Steven Universe, and I gush about how much I love Steven Universe for 2 hours.
Right.
But multiple people said, I never watched that show. Now you really got me into it, and I'm a super fan. So I hope we can do that for folks.
Yeah, we give a lot of context on the show before we start talking about the episode in question. We talk about the history of the show, the creators, why it's important, where it aired, just giving it its place in history and its place in animation history as well. So I feel like you don't need to know about the episode ahead of time. You can just jump in and we'll help talk you through it.
Yeah, what you just mentioned there was I was in the same way, same mindset for when Futurama was coming out, right? I watched a couple of episodes when it debuted on Fox, and all I thought at the time when I was a diehard Simpsons fan, I was just like, yeah, this is just they're trying to be the Simpsons, and I never paid attention to it mostly for its original run until it was taken off and the DVD sets came out. And what was that, like early 2000s something, right? And I got the DVD sets and I went through it and I go, oh my God, how could I have been so short-sighted on this? The show's amazing. And then, a few years later, they bring out the movies, and then they bring a whole bunch of other stuff back.
For Futurama, which we are going through the first season of Futurama on the Patreon, I kind of had that reaction, too, of like I liked it, but I wasn't impressed with the first episodes, and I didn't really get into the groove of watching it like I watched The Simpsons. But then when I got the DVDs, plus watching the reruns on Adult Swim, I was like, oh, no, this show is so great. I finally got it.
Yeah, I thought I was burned out on the show, frankly, because I loved it from day one, and I watched the first 4 seasons like 1,000 times because of Adult Swim and DVDs. And now doing it for the show, watching it for the show, I'm like, oh no, I still love this. I'm still way into this, and I'm glad to be able to talk about it on a podcast.
And also with anime, like I just said, I wanted to watch it because I did love everything that had to do with animation, but for some reason I just had some weird mental hang up with watching most anime stuff. Yet I watched the manga stuff, like the old 70s Japanese robot shows, Go Lion and Mazinger Z, which I loved. And I'm like, well, if I like that, it's in the same vein of this. Why can't I sit down and watch this, but I can watch the other thing?
Well, if you buy a Crunchyroll subscriction for like $5 a month, you will immediately have like 300 anime series at your fingertips. so it's never been easier to seek it out.
Yeah, the older stuff is harder to get your hands on.
That is true,
compared to the new stuff, which, that was a realization I had as an anime fan. What really got me into anime in the late 90s was when I realized, like, wait, all these cartoons I watched as a kid that looked a certain way, and I didn't understand. Like, I like Voltron and Robot Z, or I forget what Mazinger Z was called here.
Transor Z.
I watched at least the first special of that. Transor Z, I watched the VHS of that, and I loved it, but I didn't understand why, and that stylistically what was so appealing to me. And then once I got access to unedited Japanese animation, I was like, oh my God, this is all from Japan, the magical land of great footage. That's all the great animation.
I've talked about this on podcasts before, but Roger Ebert let me know what anime was, because I was, as a very young boy, I was watching his At the Movie Show, and his video pick of the week was My Neighbor Totoro, and he explained what anime was, how Japan made anime, and it unlocked all these things in my brain, like, I like anime! I figured it out!
Well, thanks to Comic-Cons and other smaller conventions that happen around the country, you can always find the bootleg versions if you can't find the official versions. Somebody has a copy of something that you like. And not too long ago, I remember Henry was going to Japan, and I hit him up. I'm like, if you find anything that's Mazinger Z over there, as far as an official series set, please let me know. I will pay whatever it costs. But couldn't find it. But I found the Transor Z, the entire series, all the editing and redubbing they did for the United States, and it's just not the same. When I watched it as a kid, I loved it, but watching it now, it's mind-numbing.
Yeah, when you're a kid, you don't notice obvious edits or changes to dialogue or any of that stuff.
There was recently just live streamed to theaters. I think it was a Fathom event last month. They had a new Mazinger Z movie. One of our friends saw, Matthew J. He didn't like it very much, but maybe you need to be a Mazinger Z fan to be on board.
Mm. Well, I like those old 70s robot shows because they were so insanely violent, and they were a cartoon where you're seeing huge machines just stomping on villagers, and the female robots are shooting missiles out of their breastplates, and they're just cutting people in half. There's demon faces and devil faces and blood, and you're like, why wasn't this on channel 11 when I came home from school?
Yeah, I think that was the appeal of also in the 90s Dragon Ball or Power Rangers, because in the 80s when we were kids, or on the cartoons made in America, they would just be like, well, He-Man can't punch this guy. He has to throw a net on him, or you'd never get real violence. Or same with the Ninja Turtles. They'd have to they can't kick Shredder in the face. They'll throw a pizza at him.
Yeah, comedy fights.
Yeah. So when you finally got to see an actual guy just get punched in the face or slashed with a sword, you're like, whoa.
Yeah. If anything, it shows that violence has consequences. So it's good for kids.
I was throwing pizzas at my brother because Michelangelo told me to.
He was scalded horribly.
What do you think about the fact that the anime stuff is coming even more into the mainstream consciousness in this country, where you have Battle Angel, I believe that was the old anime one, where it's becoming a movie now, and then Netflix has been releasing different series on their service, like Devilman Crybaby and a few others just showed up on the main page. People are now wanting to, it's not just a niche thing anymore, it's starting to creep up more into this is what people just watch in general.
I think it's great. I mean, I think there was some shame associated with liking anime for a long time until recent memory, but the people that are now in their late 20s, mid 20s, they're the people who were watching anime as the anime boom happened in America. So they're just like, yeah, these are just cartoons I watch. They're not different cartoons. They're not special cartoons. They're just like the cartoons I like. So they have now grown up and are making cartoons, which have a lot of anime influence.
And that Netflix stuff is so cool because, I mean, Netflix just needs content all the time. They'd like to launch a new series or a season of something. It feels like 3 times a week. And at a certain point, they've filmed every live action person they can film, and they kind of have to turn to animation. And then meanwhile, they've got the anime industry, which is dying for outside money outside of the Tokyo television system. So it's a perfect meeting. They're like, well, we can make animation cheaper than Americans do. What's a lot of money to you probably feels like not a lot of money to Netflix. And it just has made this great partnership. Like, they've produced so much great animation that then gets streamed. It's also been cool, like, Japanese companies. I say this as somebody who worked in the games field, and knows how skittish Japanese companies can be about anything involving the internet. It's cool to see them embrace streaming. They're like, no, we could make money off streaming. It's not just where pirates go to steal our stuff.
Yeah, previously, like a decade ago or more, an anime series would air, and maybe in a year or 2 or 3 or 4 you get it. But now on streaming services, like the same day in America, there is either a sub or a dub. So it cuts out the whole piracy fan subbing thing completely. They just want to give you the content up front.
It's nice.
Bob, you said, there used to be some sort of shame associated with watching anime. Would you say now it would be more like less shame?
Yes, not quite pride, but less shame. But yeah, it's great. It's like I feel like everyone is just, it's okay to like anime now, when before it was like this thing you would eventually tell someone. But now it's just like up front, like, oh, have you seen Devilman Crybaby? Have you seen this? Have you seen that? It's like, oh man, like I didn't have to work to get to this. You're not going to pants me.
It used to be like a 5th date mentioning thing.
Yeah.
Like, well, maybe I like anime, but now you can be upfront.
What else can we expect coming up from What a Cartoon and also the Patreon feed from you guys?
Well, we do have some interviews in the works. We don't want to spoil anything ahead of time, but we're always working to get new writers and art people from The Simpsons. But in terms of upcoming episodes of What a Cartoon, like we said, we have Beavis and Butthead, Bobby's World, Star Wars The Clone Wars, Venture Brothers. Am I missing anything, Henry, that we got?
I think that's all the ones. That's like the next month of them. And then on top of that, still going strong with the season of Talking Futurama. We're going through all of that. And also, on Talking Simpsons, we just had a really cool episode with 2 guests from Chapo Trap House, Virgil Texas and Matt Chrisman, talking about 2 Bad Neighbors. And next week, Steven Sadak of We Hate Movies. We Hate Movies. I was going to say What a Cartoon.
What a movie.
He talks with us about scenes from the class struggle of Springfield, the Chanel's dress episode, which as a little kid was actually one of my least favorite episodes, but I found a new appreciation for it, which I really enjoyed it. And I think the listeners will too. Steven was a great guest. He was super duper funny.
And their podcast is great. We Hate Movies is fantastic. And they're in New York too.
Mm-hmm. Being longtime Simpsons fans, it was always kind of cool if you dropped a quote somewhere, right, and then somebody actually got it, so they're like, oh my god, you watch The Simpsons too, and it was kind of like a cool little bond, cool little club to be in. And nowadays when you see something on Twitter and you're like, oh, and you want to go put a Simpsons quote next to it and you read the responses, and then like half the people already made the comment, does that drive you nuts? Like it's like, oh, now everybody's doing this.
I mean, kind of. I mean, I do like it. So I can't, if you don't speak in like half Simpsons language, I really can't communicate with you. So at some level, I do agree with it. But at another level, I want to be first with the reference.
Yes. It's annoying to not be first. You kind of have to be first, at least with a Frinkiac meme. If you can get that, you're like, well, I got the Frinkiac picture of it. I didn't just type out the word.
Better yet, a GIF. Yeah. A GIF with text. That's high level commenting.
Yeah. And though that's also why Simpsons quoting has now turned into the most one of the most meta weird things on Twitter of just no, it's not just quoting the line, it's then recontextualizing it with a second line together.
Or shitposting where you're combining references. It's great. I love how deep it goes.
That's what was happening with steamed hams. One of my new favorite ones I've been seeing them doing is the liver and onions.
Yeah.
Somebody will say, it'll be a classic Simpsons line, but then they'll replace what they're about to get as, okay, so one is from the St. Patrick's Day Parade. We're like, open your yap, boyos, for some liver and onions. And then it cuts to everybody has the Chester J. Lampwick's mouth licking his lips at the idea of liver and onions.
And the cannon is firing at people, too. It's like, people put a lot of work into making Simpsons shitposts. It's amazing.
What was the one that was going around for a while where... damn it! It was something where everybody's face started turning into a different one particular face.
Oh yeah, yeah. Next to steamed hams, that is one of the more popular shitposts in which they will put the something is revealed, and when the character reacts, it will turn into the Homer reacting to the Dud face from Summer of 4'2".
It's so creepy.
Like for example, it's when one of my favorites is when after Burns got punched by Homer, and he's trying to see if Homer is there, and he puts the mirror under the door, and he tilts it to see Homer. But in the mirror, you don't see Homer's smiling face, which is the regular joke. You see a picture of the dud card that looks like Milhouse. And then when it cuts back to Burns' face, it is now Homer's face with his slow smile, realizing it's the dud. It's just, it's insane to explain it, but it's so funny to see it.
It's so visually perfect. And I think a recent one I've seen is like Homer dancing with the lollipop and the ice cream cone is being put everywhere now.
Yeah, that's so great.
Well, at least it's replacing when you would see him back into the hedge like Terminator 2, or Abe walking into the to the bordello, taking his hat off, putting the hat back on, and walking right out.
I still love that one.
Those are both great for social media interactions.
Yeah, when you want no part of something.
It's like, well.
Now that I'm thinking about it, you could do the dud with. There's this movie coming out this week that I refuse to see because it freaks me out. Truth or Dare, when they do that evil smile on their face. Have you seen the trailer for this?
I have not.
All right, look up Truth or Dare. It's a movie coming out on the 13th, and it's some Mexican curse that cursed this group of friends that you have to do it, or else if you refuse to do the truth or the dare, all of a sudden this evil smile comes into their face. Like it's almost cartoony because the spirit possessed them, and then it kills that person. And those smiles freak me out. When I saw the trailer in the theater, I was like, I can't watch this movie. Might try to be the first to see if you can figure that out with the dud.
Knowing Simpsons fans, I bet at least 5 people have done it.
If nobody's done it, I'm going to try it. I'm going to do it.
So what you're saying is we're living in the world of where you think about it, then all of a sudden you go, Simpsons fans did it.
Simpsons fans
did it. That's right. Oh, that's great.
Last thing, you guys said you're huge podcast fans. You listen to all different things. What do you listen to? What's out there that you enjoy outside of obviously the fine work you're doing with Talking Simpsons and What a Cartoon? What do you guys listen to when you're not making podcasts? I
listen to like way too many podcasts. On the top of my list, though, I would say Last Podcast on the Left is a great true crime podcast.
Yes.
Also, Chaplin's House is a great comedy leftist podcast. We Hate Movies is really good. They're a fantastic bad movie podcast. And the last one I'll mention is the Gilbert Gottfried podcast, which is like an amazing series of interviews with people that are 90 years old and older.
And they're all dirty.
They're all dirty old men or women.
It's Gilbert Gottfried being his usual self, but he is interviewing all of the people he cared about who haven't been relevant in 50 years. And he constantly has a great joke of like, well, now that we've interviewed them, they can die. Yeah. And they usually do.
I never thought I'd be so into an interview with the mom from Happy Days, but it was one of the best podcasts I've heard this year.
I was just going to bring that up where he's talking about her and the Fonz, like doing it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
Apparently they would make out as like a joke for the audience, but I guess it upset some people.
Well, if I can name a couple quick ones, one of my new favorites is from the Giant Bomb guys is All Systems Goku, where they're actually kind of doing the Talking Simpsons thing, except they're watching Dragon Ball Z for the first time and having very weird reactions to it.
That's great.
And another of my favorites, though I feel personally insulted by this podcast, I also love it, is the podcast called Meet My Friends, the Friends with Tom Sharpling, which is they go through every episode of The Friends, every one episode at a time, except the joke is that it's a show within a show where it's really about the show falling apart and the guy trying to do a good show and everything going wrong, but while still analyzing every episode of Friends. It's a very like meta podcast, but I really enjoy it. It's even though I am being personally insulted for doing a recap show by it.
It sounds in the same vein. If you get a chance, I'm sure it'll show up in San Francisco at some point, but there was a British play that J.J. Abrams saw, and he wound up becoming the producer for the American performance called The Play That Goes Wrong. And it's very meta, where you're watching a 1920s-ish murder mystery in a mansion kind of a story, but everything falls wrong. People miss cues, scenery falls down, the wrong person dies.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah, when they go through the door, it turns out they were on the second floor and they fall to the first floor. Like, all this weird stuff happens. They mess with the audience before and during intermission. Like, when I was there, they were looking for somebody and it seemed real because the people you didn't know were part of the performance. They were dressed as the theater, like, the ushers and what have you. They were looking for this little teacup dog that came out of some lady's purse, and they were asking everybody to get up and not move because you're going to step on the dog. And I'm like, what is going on here? And then at the end, they do the cast bow, and you're like, oh my God, I feel like such an idiot for falling for this.
That sounds fantastic.
Oh, that sounds great.
There's a version that they taped for television online. You can look at it. They did it at the Royal Theatre in over in England. They did a condensed version of one scene, and it gives you the whole gist of what this performance is about. If you like that podcast, which I just wrote down, I think I'm going to go check that out right now. You should definitely check out that play when it's traveling around the country, and I'm sure it'll come to San Francisco.
Awesome. Man, thanks. That's a great suggestion.
We've been talking with Henry Gilbert and Bob Mackey, the creators of the Talking Simpsons podcast, and now their brand new venture, What a Cartoon, where they're exploring all things animation from the point of fans, but giving you all the information that you may or may not know or want. But it's a good time to have by all. So subscribe to these podcasts. Support them on their Patreon for Talking Simpsons. These men do good work, just like, the National Sugar Board or something like that.
Thank you. Yes, we're half as good as the Fruit Punch Advisory.
We're real American heroes.
Yes. Did we cover everything? Did we get everything done? Or is there anything we forgot?
Yeah, I mean, it's patreon.com/Talking Simpsons. $5 level is very popular. If you sign up now, you will probably get 100 plus podcasts immediately.
I believe the count on just things with the tag podcast on them are 124.
Yes. Wow. We've done a lot.
And again, go back through their back catalog. If you can support them on Patreon, you'll get the first season of Talking Simpsons. Definitely worth. If you're one of those completist type of people, you can start from episode 1 in the first season and work your way up to where they are currently. And also, I have to say, their Homer at the Bat episode is probably the best episode that they've done.
What a guest.
Yeah.
Yes.
We got to have you back.
Yes, I would love to do that at some point. Guys, thank you so much. Thanks for wasting so much of your time with me. I do appreciate it. And hopefully I'll see you again on Talking Simpsons.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Eric.
Thank you.
Oh, for crying out loud! Just give him a nickel and let's get going.
It's Erik Nagel. And that's all the time we have. Follow the show at It's Erik Nagel on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Unless we do something stupid or something better comes along. We'll be back next time.